Hey everyone, this is Chappie US, and I am going to be doing a tutorial right now regarding recalibrating general stats and so forth on Tom Clancy's The Division. So what I have here, I'm on my main character, and I have a third character that's about to hit level 30, at which point I want to have a gear set ready for him to go so that he can just hit the ground running. I won't have to take any time to tweak him or anything like that. I'm just going to have it sitting for him in my stash, ready to go. So I've already switched over all my gear. Usually my gear score is a little bit higher than this. You'll see down in the lower right hand corner where it actually signifies your gear score. So right now I'm at a gear score of 204. And that's an overall composite of all the gear that I'm wearing. Armor pieces, weapons, and so forth. You'll see up at the top, I've got my firearms. It's at almost 3,800. Stamina's only at 1k, and electronics is only at 1k. That's going to change dramatically over the course of the next few minutes. Now, what I've decided to do is something a little different with this character, simply because I already have a tactician set. That's on my first alt. High skill power, high stamina, relatively low firearm build. And then this guy, usually I'm running my high firearms, high stamina, low electronics build. For my third character, I've decided to go with a warlord build. So the warlord is a gun that drops off of the challenge mode of the incursion. It's a named gun, and it's not very good. And a lot of people talk pretty bad about it, and they're right to do so. It has a high gear score, relatively speaking, of 204. And it's one of the few named guns in the game, kind of like the Caduceus or the Pacan. It has some interesting talents on it, all right? It has capable, using a skill improves the handling of your weapon for 13.5 seconds. Ferocious, that increases your damage against elite named enemies by 14%. And unforgiving, which means that as you get weaker or get damaged, you do more damage. It has a fairly high overall stat requirement for unlocking Ferocious as a talent. You need to have over 2,000 in firearm stamina and electronics. So what we're going to be trying to do here today is getting all three stats up to that point, okay, to unlock that third talent. All right, and for the purpose of this build, I'm also doing a 4-striker, 2-sentry setup. So that's 4 pieces of striker gear. Now you'll notice in the striker set, you've got certain talents that unlock based on the number of pieces of striker gear, striker specific gear that you have. So I'm doing 4-striker, 2-sentry. Right now, this is just the gear, just straight as it is, as I found it off the boss. Now we're going to go to move forward with adjusting this all up. So over here, up in your base of operations, once you've unlocked your tech wing, you've got this cool little recalibration station, right? And that's going to be one of the 3 ways that we're going to alter our stats in the ways that to get to the point where we need to get. So the 3 different primary ways that you can change your stats, of course, the number 1 is going to be by changing your gear. So I can swap it around, of course, by getting different gear drops. Okay, then the second way is through recalibration, and then the third way is through modifications. All right, so we notice I've got a smattering of modifications here in my inventory. Depending on what I need in the end, that's where it's going to be adjusted, right? Different pieces of gear have different options for modification slots. The chest pieces can have supposedly up to 3. I've only seen 2. The masks can have up to 2. All the others can have 1, except for the gloves. I've never seen a pair of gloves with a modification slot on them. All right. So here we go in here. To me, the most important thing any piece of gear can have is, in fact, a modification slot. The modifications can give you up to 143
in a stat area, whether that's firearms, stamina, or electronics. But they also have a secondary stat that can be armor. It can improve your skill power, your skill haste. It can give you additional health. I mean, we're talking about, a quarter of what your initial base stat is. Like firearms, this gear piece specifically has 632 base firearms, another 143 in any area that I want. That's a big deal. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make sure that I have enough mod slots. Now this piece of armor already has 12% health on kill. That's another stat that we're going to talk about a little later that's pretty important. I like the plus 3,000 health as well. You'll notice over here in the possible recalibrations, I've got the option to potentially get one gear mod slot here, no gear mod slot there, and one gear mod slot here in the 13.5% exotic damage resilience. So here are 3 different areas that I could potentially get one gear mod slot. Now it's important to identify which one you want to get rid of the most, because you can only re-roll one of these sections a single time. You can only recalibrate it once. Once you've done that, you're locked in. That's the one area that you're going to have to try to recalibrate in the future. You can't. Once I've changed this, and you'll see what I mean, it'll be highlighted. Once I've changed this, it's the only one that I can change. So here I've got this, and for me personally with this build, I'm not too into the exotic damage resilience, and so I'm going to try for the gear mod slot here. All right, and on the very first try, I got it as an option, and so I'm going to select that here. You'll notice it costs credits. Down on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the number of credits I have, how much it costs. This adds up over time. Right now it's 78k to recalibrate. Every time I recalibrate, it's going to go up. Now you can see that it's at 110,000, and so you have to be really careful at what you're going to be recalibrating, how you're going to be doing that. The other piece of gear that I had that has a possible recalibration or a mod slot on it that doesn't currently is my holster. All right, so on the holster, only one area has that option of a gear mod slot, and so I'm going to go for it right now. And again, I got it on the first try, which makes me very happy. So we're going to replace that with the gear mod slot. And you'll notice again, what I was mentioning earlier, every other area that could be recalibrated has now been grayed out. I can only attempt to recalibrate this one specific area in the future. I wish that was something that they would change, but I understand that they don't want you to get to max stats too quickly, I guess. I don't know. It seems silly to me. All right, so now we've got mod slots in all of our gear. That's going to give us a lot of variability later on when we're finishing up the build. Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to make absolutely certain that I have, that I can get to, is my max damage mitigation. So in the game, you've got tons of variability, and that's something that's kind of unique about Tom Clancy's The Division as far as shooters go, and even as far as role-playing games go. I mean, you've got some of this in other individually played role-playing games, but as far as MMOs go and what I've played, what I've experienced, this type of variability is very unique. And it's one of the reasons I really love the game. I think that it adds a whole element to the game that a lot of other games lack, and I really love it. Now I've scrolled down here to what I consider to be one of the most important stats in the game, which is armor. You'll notice my armor mitigation is extremely low. It's at below 45%. Now, the armor directly affects how much damage you're going to take from enemy bullets. Okay, so we want to get that to the soft cap. Now the soft cap is 65%. So we're going to go back here into the recalibration area, and we're going to start looking at some of these pieces of gear. Now we've already re-rolled the body armor, so we can't re-roll that. So let's look here. All right, I can get a bonus up to 454 armor there. And again, this isn't a skill build, and so I'm not too worried about the skill haste, so we're going to try for that. Hopefully I end up having enough credits to get to where we need to get. I might not. Okay, so right off the bat, we got 451 armor. That's good. All right, So that takes us up substantially. Now that's not going to be nearly enough. We were 20% below where we needed to be before. Let's see. Does gloves have the option? No, they don't. No bonus armor in any of those areas. And so we're not going to worry about that yet. Already did the holster. Now let's look at the knee pads. Okay, these knee pads have already been re-rolled previously. So it's going to be really difficult to get this set of gear to the armor percentage that we need. Not impossible, however. As I was saying earlier, our different modification slots, right, our different mods can have bonus armor on them. And so it's not going to be impossible to get there. All right, so let's keep going. The next thing that we need to modify or to change, recalibrate, is our stats. Now, each talent has a required stat in order to unlock that talent, as I was stating earlier. We've got to get, in order to activate all of the talents on the Warlord, we need to get everything above 2K. Right now, we're a far cry from that on both stamina and electronics. Now, I personally feel that stamina on this build is going to be more important than electronics, and so that's the first place that we're going to start modifying from. I have way more firearms than I need at this point, so we're going to do that stat first. All right, we've already re-rolled that. We haven't re-rolled the gloves yet, but those, and so the first thing that we're going to do is try to get stamina, a high stamina, or electronics on this re-roll. Okay. All right, excellent. So the highest that we rolled here was firearms, but we don't need that much, the firearms. We do need additional electronics, and because that's so much higher than the stamina, and I need electronics anyway in order to get the unlock, we're going to go with that on this piece of gear. All right. Now we've basically rerolled everything that we can as far as the base stats. Every piece of gear has kind of been rerolled. We might not be able to get this gear set to the stat point that we need because we're not able to reroll the firearms as much as we need to in order to get it where we need to be. So in the end, it might just end up being one of those things where we do in fact have to get additional pieces of gear in order to unlock what we need to do in order to get the Warlord completely to the point where we want it to be. But we can do our best. All right, so let's go into the equipment. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mod slots that we can add pieces to. Now again, we want to get the stamina up and the electronics up. And like I was saying earlier, I kind of really want more stamina on this build than I want on the electronics. And so we're going to kind of focus that. I've got various stamina mods in my inventory here right now. And so we're just going to kind of pop those in there. All right, already we're up to 1400. Now with an additional 3 stamina mods, we can get another, we can be pushing that 2K mark. But again, in order to get to the point where we need to be, I'm probably going to have to try and find another few pieces of the striker's gear in order to raise up to where I need to be in order to get all 3 stats across the board. All right, I hope this really helps anyone who's wondering about the game. I'm going to switch back to my main set so that you can kind of see what I did in order to build up my overall stats properly. So let's go back here. So this is kind of what I'd consider to be a close to complete set. You'll notice I've got my 4 pieces of sentry, 2 pieces of striker, What this means is that I've got the complete unlock for the 4-set bonus for Sentry, as well as the unlock for the 2-set bonus for Striker, which is an extra 20% enemy armor damage. So those stack all together to give me a nice amount of damage. My firearms is at 3,500, my stamina is at 2,700. My electronics, not a big focus on this build. I haven't put anything into it other than what's naturally there. You'll also notice over here, scroll down to my armor, I'm at the 65% damage mitigation that I want. Very important. Also, I have most of the talents on my guns unlocked. You'll notice I don't have one unlocked on this gun. And that's because I don't care about that talent so much. And that is, killing a target with this weapon removes all negative status effects. That's great if you can get there. For me, it's not worth speccing into the 2K electronics required. But Brutal is unlocked, which is important, and the Swift talent is just automatically given to me. So, there you have it. All the information about stats, builds, and so forth, without going into too much detail on the nitty-gritty on individual stats as well. I hope this helps anyone that's wondering or thinking about the division or really confused by the different stat points, how to recalibrate and so forth. Thank you for taking the time, and I'll talk to you later.